Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 countries that would be virtually impossible to invade.
Number 10. Australia. Active personnel 60,000, reserve 44,000, tanks 59, artillery 75, air fighters 78, helicopters 188, naval strength 47, submarines 6, aircraft carriers 2. Though it boasts a relatively small population, roughly 23 million, Australia is nevertheless huge, a continent in and of itself. With the exception of the coastal areas where 98% of its population live, the island nation is an almost 3 million square mile scorching desert. A perfect place for any army to hide in, and from where to launch surprise attacks on any would-be invader. Given its geographical position, however, this would be highly unlikely. The scorching outback, as well as the coral barrier reef, protect large parts of Queensland. During World War II, the Japanese seriously considered an invasion of Australia, but given the situation at hand, they decided against it. While most of the Australian forces were already deployed either in Europe or Northern Africa, the Japanese estimated around 200,000 soldiers would be needed to take hold of the island nation. They instead opted to isolate Australia as much as possible, trying to cut it off from the US. Even if the Japanese had invaded and succeeded in taking over all of the coastal cities, Australians would have been able to keep a long and extensive guerrilla war going from various hideouts scattered across the outback. According to the Global Peace Index, Australia ranks 3rd in the Asia-Pacific region and 9th in the world. Number 9. Switzerland. Active personnel 100,000, reserve 77,000, tanks 224, artillery 224, air fighters 63, and helicopters 43. Pretty much everyone is aware by now of Switzerland's famous neutrality. As Europe was plunged into 2 world wars, the Alpine country was spared from the terrific onslaught. Given its mountainous location, the country devised a defensive plan known as the Swiss National Redoubt, which was deployed as early as the 1880s. The plan involved building a series of fortresses and strongholds in key locations around many mountain passes. These defenses proved useful in thwarting the different warring factions from invading Switzerland throughout the 20th century. After World War II and fearing a potential Soviet invasion, the plan was expanded to include Switzerland's entire infrastructure. The Swiss military wired all roads and railways with dynamite, which would be detonated in case of an attack. This way, any invader would have to waste time and energy in getting into the country. Moreover, the many bunkers, tunnels, and fortresses built within the mountains themselves offer access and protection for entire military divisions to strike anywhere at a moment's notice. Over the years, Switzerland has decreased the number of its active personnel from 400,000 in 1995 to 220,000 in 2004, and again to 100,000 men in 2016. Having a direct democracy instead of a representative one, its citizens are active participants in all major decisions happening in the country. This includes decisions related to its military and going to war. While they agreed to reduce the number of active personnel, they also agreed to raise the military budget by 2.4 billion Swiss francs and to even keep conscription in place. In fact, all citizens have military training and get to keep their weapon after its completion. At present, there are an estimated 45.7 weapons per 100 people within Switzerland. So, if it ever gets invaded, almost 4 million citizens are immediately available for military service, with another 3 million fit for joining as well. Moreover, while so many decision-makers around the world keep their wealth in Swiss bank accounts, it would be counterintuitive for them to risk losing it in the chaos of an invasion. Plus, those Swiss Army knives, well, they can do everything. Number 8. Tuvalu, New Zealand, Iceland, and Bhutan. All 4 of these nations fall within this category not because they are heavily defended or because of their armed forces, but because of their isolation and lack of any strategic or economic importance for a potential invader. Out of these nations, only New Zealand and Bhutan have any armies, of roughly 9,000 and 6,000 active personnel respectively. New Zealand, even though it's a developed nation, is not involved in any conflicts around the world, earning it the number 4 spot in the Global Peace Index in 2015. And in the unlikely event of it ever being invaded, the mountainous terrain can offer ample opportunity for waging guerrilla warfare. Moreover, located at almost 1,000 miles from the nearest major landmass of Australia, mounting an effective offensive would be quite problematic. Plus, it can always call all of those elves and hobbits into service if need be. Tuvalu, on the other hand, has no armed forces whatsoever. It only has a small police force and a maritime surveillance unit for internal security. Given its isolation in the Pacific Ocean, it's highly unlikely for anyone to target the tiny island for invasion. In a somewhat similar situation is Iceland, which has not had a standing army since 1869, but is, however, an active member of NATO. Its national defense and security is guaranteed by the United States, which up until 2006 had a military base on the island. Nevertheless, Iceland still has a military peacekeeping force, an air defense system, an extensive militarized coast guard, and a tactical police force. According to the same Global Peace Index we mentioned before, Iceland is at the number 1 spot. Bhutan is the only continental and landlocked country among these 4, located high up in the Himalayas. Though sandwiched between India and China, Bhutan is one of the most secluded nations in the world, and the happiest. It has also kept itself out of any foreign entanglements since it joined the UN in 1971. The country has no diplomatic relations with the US, and only Bangladesh and India have embassies in Bhutan. It's undeniably true that if any other nation decided to invade any of these countries, they would most likely be able to do so without any great opposition. But because of their isolation and peaceful demeanor, what would be the point? Number 7. Japan. Active personnel 250,000, reserve 42,000, tanks 777, artillery 839, air fighters 289, helicopters 741, naval strength 131, submarines 17, carriers 3. Besides being an island nation, which are always more difficult to invade, just ask the Mongols, Japan also boasts a sizable army and a particularly powerful economy, the 4th largest in the world. Their national defense budget alone is somewhere around $49 billion, the 6th highest in the world. The Japanese are notorious when it comes to the defense of their country, as was seen throughout history. During World War II, the Americans were more or less forced to drop 2 nuclear bombs over Japanese cities in order to hasten the end of the war, since the Allies realized the word surrender doesn't really exist in the minds of Japanese soldiers. Even though the country is aging, Japan has a total population of 126 million, and some 1.2 million reach military age annually. Due to the increasing restless situation in the South China Sea, Japan began its first military expansion in over 40 years. Though sizably smaller than its counterpart in the region, China, the Japanese army is far better equipped and is especially designed to be a defensive force rather than an offensive one. This was part of the peace clause after World War II. In any case, their air force is the 5th largest in the world and the most sophisticated. Moreover, any incursion into Japanese territory by a foreign power would be challenged by both the Japanese themselves as well as the US military, as stipulated in the Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security between the United States and Japan. Number 6. Iran. Active personnel 545,000, reserve 1.8 million, tanks 1,658, artillery 2,400, air fighters 137, helicopters 140, naval strength 398, submarines 33. In recent decades, the Middle East has become a hotbed for conflict, extremism, and social and economic instability, no doubt fueled by the vast amounts of oil found beneath the region. Pun sort of intended. But while several of its neighbors have succumbed to the ravages of war, Iran is still a strong influence and stability factor in the region. Regardless, many other governments, like that of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States, would like to see that change. Moreover, Iran has begun its own nuclear program, trying to consolidate its power in the region even further. This new turn of events has made many believe that it is not a good idea to invade Iran. However, a peaceful resolution would be a far better and less costly solution for everyone. For starters, Iran has a tremendously large army, the largest army in the Middle East. Moreover, the country is literally covered by mountains, perfect for concealed defensive facilities and underground bunkers. This type of terrain, as well as Iran's battle-hardened army, can withstand a prolonged war of attrition against any superior attacking force. In the meantime, the Iranian government is perfectly capable of using a mix of mines, submarines, anti-ship missiles, drones, and all sorts of other tactical forces to disrupt the flow of oil exports in the Gulf region, disrupting the world economy as a whole. One such invasion of Iran would not be supported by countries like Russia, China, or even the EU, who only stand to lose from such attacks. And even if the attack was a success and all nuclear facilities were destroyed, this would only delay Iran's nuclear program by a mere 4 years. Number 5. Canada. Active personnel 95,000, reserve 51,000, tanks 181, artillery 161, air fighters 64, helicopters 175, naval strength 63, submarines 4. Canada is the second largest country in terms of surface area after Russia, and equally as cold, and we all know what happened when Napoleon tried to invade Russia, but we'll get to that later. Located at the northern fringes of the world, Canada would be quite difficult to invade, even though most of its 35 million people live close to the border with the United States. But given its size and vast expanses of wilderness, taking over all of Canada by force could be problematic for anyone. Moreover, it's mostly surrounded by oceans and only shares a border with just one other nation, which is its ally and just happens to be the world's largest superpower. Bringing in troops and holding a steady supply line would be quite difficult. From an economic standpoint, the country is also well prepared to withstand a prolonged war of attrition if need be. Its defense budget is $14.7 billion, and the country is currently producing more oil than it consumes. Canada's best means of defense, however, is their peaceful and friendly attitude towards other nation-states around the world, giving little reason for others to invade them. Not to mention Canada is also a part of NATO. Nevertheless, if anyone got any bright ideas, they would have a really tough time invading since Canada's military is very well equipped, trained and supplied with cutting-edge technology. According to the Global Firepower Index, Canada is ranked number 22 in terms of overall military strength, but given its geopolitical location and geopolitical situation, the nation ranks better when it comes to an actual invasion by a foreign power. In 1974, the US declassified War Plan Red, a comprehensive offensive strategy against Canada devised in 1927, in case the British ever wanted to attack the US from the north. Number 4. North Korea. Active personnel 700,000, reserve 4.5 million, tanks 4,200, artillery 6,550, air fighters 458, helicopters 222, naval strength 967 with 70 submarines and 8 nuclear warheads. As seen during the Korean War in the early 1950s, both South Korea and the United States tried to take down the North, but to no avail. And while there is a huge discrepancy between the technological advancements between the two Koreas nowadays, many of the reasons for why the initial invasion failed are still there. Since North Korea developed its own nuclear weapons, as well as the many crimes against humanity happening over there under the rule of the Kim family, these would certainly warrant an invasion and regime overthrow by the UN. However, this invasion is not foreseen anytime in the near future. The reasons have to do more with geopolitics than anything else, and pretty much everyone involved is unwilling to mount such an undertaking. For starters, there's China, which is North Korea's biggest ally and who also supported it in the 50s. They are content to keeping the country the way it is, as sort of a buffer zone between them and the South. However, if something were to happen in North Korea, it is quite possible that millions of people would flood into Manchuria, trying to leave the country and destabilize the northern Chinese region. And lastly, there's the status quo between China and the US, where China has its sights on Taiwan and the US on DPRK. This way, neither is willing to make a move, not wanting to antagonize the other. And even if the Chinese weren't the problem, there's the South Koreans, who, according to the polls, are afraid of the cost of unification with the North and even started to consider the North Koreans as being different people from themselves. It's likely the case with Germany today, where even after nearly 30 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall, East Germany is struggling to catch up with the West. Given the huge economical discrepancy between the two, the same thing would apply to Korea if it is ever reunited, but on a much, much larger scale. The most likely invasion of North Korea would happen from within, in the form of a coup. Number 3. United Kingdom. Active personnel 150,000, reserves 182,000, tanks 407, artillery 227, air fighters 91, helicopters 397, naval strength 76, submarines 10, aircraft carriers 1, nuclear warheads 215. Island nations are among some of the most common in this list, and the United Kingdom is a prime example of a hard-to-invade country. In fact, the last time Britain was totally and successfully invaded was in 1066, during the Norman conquest of England. During World War II, try as they might, Hitler and the Nazis were unable to mount an effective attack on the island, proving just how much 20 miles of open water means in organizing an effective landing. Surrounded by two oceans and the ever-turbulent North Sea, the British Isles can only be effectively invaded from the south, across the English Channel. But even this crossing is treacherous and difficult. The southeastern English coast consists of steep cliffs, known as the White Cliffs of Dover. This way, any would-be invading fleet would be forced to drop anchor farther away and be exposed to British artillery and its air force. Its military is no joke either, with cutting-edge technology and surveillance equipment. Its defense budget of $55 billion is the fifth largest in the world, as is its economy. It also has 2 aircraft carriers which are due to enter service in 2020 and 2022 respectively. Being a member of NATO, the UK has the strong advantage of allies, including the United States, obviously, who will come to their aid in the case of any threat. In and of itself, the United Kingdom has a more or less stable relationship with all nations around the globe. Number 2. Russia. Active personnel 766,000, reserves 2,485,000, tanks 15,400, artillery 10,600, air fighters 751, helicopters 1,750, naval strength 352, 60 submarines, 1 aircraft carrier, and 7,300 nuclear warheads. Without a doubt, Russia is an almost impossible country to conquer. As history has proven time and time again, with the Swedish early in the 18th century, the French under Napoleon in 1812, and then the Nazis during World War II, the incredibly harsh Russian winter can bring even the mightiest of armies to its knees. In fact, Russia has some of the biggest temperature differences on the planet. Another major impediment in conquering Russia is its sheer size. Being the largest country in the world with 6.6 million square miles, much of the country is made out of mountains and wilderness, perfect for hidden military bases and surprise attacks. Scouring these lands in the hopes of discovering all of these bases would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Even if by some miracle someone were able to successfully invade Russia, almost no one would be able to hold on to it. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russian military stagnated, but recently it has begun to grow. Since 2009, the country's annual military spending has increased by almost a third and is now at $66 billion. At present, the country has the largest fleet of tanks in the world. However, their equipment, like their tank force, is aging. Nevertheless, in recent years, the country has become more and more interested in robotics development. Though generations behind the US in terms of unmanned vehicles, Russia is perfectly capable of catching up in just a few years, says Mark Gubrat, a member of the International Committee for Robot Arms Control. This technology has the potential to become the basis for a new arms race, and if someone were to actually invade Russia, we wouldn't put it past their government on using its nuclear arsenal, even on its own soil. Number 1. USA. Active personnel 1.4 million, reserves 1.1 million, tanks 8,850, artillery 3,300, air fighters 2,300, helicopters 7,100, naval strength 415, 75 submarines, 19 aircraft carriers, and 7,100 nuclear warheads. Not surprisingly, the United States is first on this list. For starters, its geographical position, as Otto von Bismarck is believed to have said, is advantageous. The Americans are truly a lucky people. They are bordered to the north and south by weak neighbors and to the east and west by fish. Then there are the truly vast expanses of the country and all the different types of terrain, from densely forested mountains to scorching deserts. Any invading force would have difficulty holding on to these places regardless of who or what was defending them. And then there's the US military. With a defense budget of $581 billion, it alone makes up almost a third of all money spent on the military in the world. Only 20 countries have a larger GDP than the US defense budget. And contrary to Iceland, New Zealand, or Bhutan, the US follows the best defense is offense strategy. Whenever there's a conflict in the world, 9 times out of 10, the US is sure to be involved in one way or another. The country also holds hundreds of military bases around the world and has been at war almost constantly for the past 25 years. The US is also notorious for destabilizing other nation-states, engineering coups, overthrowing democratic governments, and backing military dictatorships in their stead. This interventionist policy keeps conflicts away from its borders by generating them somewhere else. And lastly, there's the matter of guns per capita. As Yamamoto, the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Japanese Navy during World War II, is commonly believed to have once said, "You cannot invade the mainland United States. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass." An invader of the mainland USA would be faced with an already armed populace. While Switzerland has an estimated 45.7 guns per 100 residents, the US has a whopping 112. That means that there are more guns than people.
So I really hope you found that video about countries that would be impossible to invade interesting. If you did, please do leave us a thumbs up below, and also leave us a comment below if you'd like to let us know what you think of the video. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other of our videos that you might enjoy watching if you enjoyed this one, so be sure to click on one of those and check it out. And thanks for watching.